Yo, what's up, friends? High performers and camp believers. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2023, our first pod of our 2023 season. Before we get started, I want to do a special shout out to our friends of the pod at Get Groovy, a non alcoholic beer that is trailblazing a new way to live and socialize with alcohol free beverages that make every moment groovy. Now that January is here, I'm pushing you to think about the only detox that actually matters, and that's detoxing things like alcohol from your life to gain some clarity on where you need to go. With mornings in mind, Get Groovy wants you to wake up, be groovy every single day in 2023. With their dry January promo, they want to show you up. They want to, fuck. All right, we'll start at the minute. Yo, what's up, friends? Happy New Year, high performers and camp believers. Welcome to 2023, our first pod of the 2023 season. Before we get started, I want to send out a big shout out to our friends of the pod, Get Groovy, a non alcoholic beer that is trailblazing a new way to live and socialize with alcohol free beverages that make every moment groovy. Now that January is here, I'm pushing you to think about the only detox that actually matters, and that's detoxing things, for some of you, like alcohol, from your life to gain some clarity on where you need to go. With mornings in mind, Get Groovy wants you to wake up and be groovy every single day of 2023. I just got myself some of their product, and I am super excited to continue to not only support such a really cool brand, but actually something for me that started to cause me to start thinking about my relationship with alcohol in a different way down my sober curious journey. And I hope it does the same for you as we head into 2023. And without further ado, let's get into the pod. Okay, what's up, people? Once again, happy 2023, our first podcast of the 2023 season. I mean, I was thinking about a lot. Yeah, I mean, I felt like December was absolutely nuts with like illnesses and flus and things going around. Needless to say, the latter part of the year just absolutely flew by. And I was thinking about this past year. I noticed that in the first 6 months, it was a lot of really foundational growth. A lot of it was painful. A lot of it was hard because there was a lot of self doubt of not really knowing whether I was doing the right thing for myself, my family, or my business. And I mentioned this in subsequent pods before. Literally, the day that my son got here, new opportunities presented themselves. Since then, I've been able to travel the world, working with high level people and other high performers, and that part is just fantastic. And for me, as I'm thinking about it, there's nowhere up from here. There's nowhere but up from here, and that part's really exciting. So, as I was coming into my own process of creating intentions for each year, it's definitely taken an evolution. And I'm constantly trying to help you to figure out systems and ways that you can start to show up as the healthiest version of yourself in all areas of your life. And I don't spend a whole lot of time with just kind of cluing you in on things I'm personally working on. So I went through my process actually last night. Like I said, December, even just the latter part, was really busy. And so I usually try to set my time for intention on the 31st. And sometimes it goes to the first and sometimes it goes to the second. But last night was my time to get really deep and to get really intentional with what I wanted to do, because I really wanted to share it on this pod, because a lot of you have been asking like, hey, we really love the things that you're doing for us, but like, what's up with you? Like, what are you working on? And I feel that that part is really fruitful as your podcast host, someone who is an expert and someone who also understands what it takes to fall in love with the process and to do so in a way where you're okay with failing and you're going to do this imperfectly. And so as I was getting myself ready last night, I have my ritual. I have an acupressure mat that has, they're plastic needles essentially. Shout out Shakti mats. They're plastic needles essentially. as a acupressure mat, and the whole premise of it is to go ahead and sit down, shirt off, and to be uncomfortable for about 5 minutes, really connecting with your body and connecting with the discomfort of wanting to get do anything but lay on those plastic needles. Um, but I found myself getting into that 20-minute span where I was able to, the first 5 minutes, really breathe through it. And then that sensation of relief started. And I feel like that's what happens with most things is you dedicate the first 5 minutes to something and it's really hard. And then your mind and that flow starts to tap in a little bit, especially if you're very intentional and especially if you cue your environment for that type of success. And so I was able to do that. And I was looking at a couple sort of prompting things. And I came across this quote that I wanted to read to you. And then I wanted to make sure that I ended the things that I'm going to be really intentional about from the standpoint of what I'm working on in 2023 in our segment of ins and outs. Okay, so I'll describe what that sounds like in a little bit. But I wanted to read this quote back to you. And it comes from Victoria Erickson. And I'm going to go ahead and read it and provide a little bit of clarity and just some notes on things that really spoke to me because, to be honest, this quote is right in line with things that we're constantly talking about on this podcast and personally things that I'm constantly working on. And I can also acknowledge that when you're working to become a healthier version and a still version of yourself, like that takes a lot of work. And so for those of you who are listening to this podcast, who are continuing to work on themselves in a way that feels authentic and aligned, like y'all are the real ones. You're going through it because I am too. And that part takes a great deal of intention and a great deal of consistency. And the only way to do that is to start confronting and taking some radical responsibility behind your role of when things are feeling really great and when things are also feeling really shitty. So without further ado, Victoria Erickson, this was the quote for me that really started some of the intentional work this last night as I was really just setting my intentions. So here it goes. If you inherently long for something, become it first, which incredibly speaks to us, right? Because if we're looking to do that really big thing, we need to start identifying with the type of person who does that thing. If you want gardens, become the gardener. Again, identify with the thing that you need to become. If you want love, embody love. If you want mental stimulation, change the conversation. There's an empowerment tool right there if you think about that, because a lot of us sometimes become prisoner of the moment. And I think what's really empowering is that you can choose to take part in a lot of ways. For most of us, you can choose to take part in what you're doing and also choose to change the narrative. And I think that part's really empowering. If you want peace, exude calmness. If you want to fill your world, if you want to fill your world with artists, begin to paint. Friends, if you want to become someone who is courageous, conscientious, believes in themselves, you're going to have to start doing the work, and you're also going to have to start surrounding yourself with 5 other people that do that, because if you do that enough, you're going to become the 6th at some point. If you want to become valued, respect your own time. Uh, that's what stuck to me, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. If you want to live ecstatically, find the ecstasy within yourself. This is how you draw it in, day by day and inch by inch. As I was coming across that, one of the things that obviously really spoke to me was the identity piece, was really working to identify the type of person that does that really important thing or that values that thing that I value. And sometimes we have no idea who that person is. And for some of us, we might be emulating a path or a journey that of someone that we know and someone that we value and look up as a mentor. But in a lot of ways, if we're getting behind the idea that oftentimes, wherever you are in your life, if you are the problem, you're also going to be the solution and vice versa. Right. And so what really spoke to me about this quote from Victoria Erickson was not only just the identity piece, but also the value and the empowerment of how much control we actually have with how we can be proactive about what we need in life and how we can start to calm the storms of reactivity, because that's what happens. right? We become reactive to a certain season in life, and some of us don't deal with that well, right? We become reactive to something that someone said or something that someone did, when part of what we're really trying to do here is we're trying to be proactive about taking care of ourselves. So when those things inevitably do happen and they throw us because we are human, we allow ourselves to get back pretty quickly because we already have systems in place. And I think that's what's really valuable. So as I was coming up with my intentions for the year, I wanted to do it in a way where I'm like, hey, this is what I'm inviting in, and this is what I'm escorting slash bouncering out of my life. Okay. And so I have three things in each column. So these are my 2023 intentions, the ins and outs of what I need in my life. And so let's start with number one. My number one in, uh, continuing to develop that shoot my shot energy. Now, what the fuck do I mean by that? Listen, there's a lot of things that I'm doing that I'm really, really proud of myself with. I continue to surprise myself in a lot of key areas, and for that reason, I'm incredibly grateful, and I'm grateful that I'm okay with failure. But there are some things, guys. I just got to be honest with you that some ways in which I've been playing it small, and I think in reference to this podcast, it's a perfect example. There are some people that I really, really admire and really adore with what they do, but for one reason or another, I have not been able to shoot my shot because I tell myself that this podcast isn't as large as they're following. Are they even going to connect with me? Like I get in my head about all of these things, and I think one of the things that I really came to last night, just in my process, when it comes to really shooting my shot, is really getting some clarity on like, okay, well, what sort of stories are are really large in your life right now? And that's what really ushered what I'm bouncing or ushering out of my life, which is the neglect of doing something that's really important. Because for me, and it doesn't have to be this way for you all, but this is the way that I personally operate. By not going out and shooting my shot and being okay with some no's, and celebrating the yeses and celebrating just even going out and shooting my shot, by not doing that, like I'm disrespecting the people that have come before me, not only just my legacy and ancestors and things like that, but also like the mentors that poured into me that saw something in me. Because believe you me, like there are moments where I feel on top of the world, and sometimes I'm faking it till I become it. Most of the time, and this is what sort of carries us into the second one. Most of the time, I'm just trying to remain active and busy so that I can execute on something. And I think what I really want to usher in is not only shooting my shot, but tapping it into number two with our next in is continuing to practice some stillness. Now, when these thoughts or these this self doubt creeps in, is really instead of just trying to outwork it, is really just trying to stop and be present and just trying to observe rather the comment. Where's the comment coming from? Is it something that's been said to me? Is it something that I created because of something that happened? Because I think when you can do that, and we touched on this a little bit more in the Power of Now with Eckhart Tolle, but I think one of the things that was really valuable in some of my readings there is how empowering it is to step into a level of consciousness where I'm available in the moment to observe some of the really uncomfortable things that I'm saying to myself, and at the same time being brave enough to observe it and not take action on it, but to observe it and to continue moving on. Because the thing that I need to usher out in reference to being more still is the idea that busy doesn't erase the pain and discomfort of what's happening in the now. And that's something that I do. I I'm constantly moving. You know, I enjoy moving. I enjoy moving my body. I enjoy doing those types of things. But I'm also really aware that I do those things oftentimes to avoid some of the pain and discomfort of what's happening uh, in my mind. And so one of the things that I want to usher in is stillness. And the thing that I really want to usher out is the idea that, busy doesn't erase the pain and discomfort. So we need to calm the fuck down and be still. And this leads me into my third one. So the thing I want to usher in here is confronting the barriers. I think we all know what those things are in our life. I think for me, one of the consistent barriers is how I want to spend my time. I get lost in that comparison trap. I will catch myself constantly scrolling with other creators, other podcast hosts, and just looking at like, wow, I need a new camera. I need these new things. I need to switch up the way that I uh, address my drop. Like there's just so much that comes out of this that I don't really give myself the credit that I deserve of being able to truly fall in love with this process, because that part is hard. So that's a consistent barrier. Um, the other thing that I get caught up in too is how I choose to disconnect. This last year in 2022, we've brought in this idea of remaining sober curious and thinking about why you use alcohol or why you use other things. And so for me, it's just continuing to confront, why am I doing this next thing, and where is it coming from? And I think that part is special, and that part takes a great deal of stillness and a great deal of shooting my shot type of energy, because that's that time of intentionality and that time to overcome some of those limiting self beliefs. And so the thing that I'm ushering out is the thought that I have time. Now, this might be contrary to your beliefs, and that's okay. I, time is an absolute fallacy. We don't have it. Now, the thing that we do have is now. The thing that we can go do, that next best thing for ourselves, is right now, not tomorrow or the next day. And so I think for me, as I confront the barriers, I also need to usher out the thought that I actually have time to work on this stuff, where if I have a moment to confront something or to practice stillness or to shoot my shot, like that's my opportunity. That's how I can respect those who have come before me and who have poured into me. Because I appreciate you people. And a lot of you might be listening to this right now, and like, I love you for that. And I don't take that lightly. And so for me, as I'm looking into this next year, I'm not making any sort of crazy resolution. I have some 1% lifts that I'm working on, and that kind of just goes back to some legacy building things that I know I need to continue to work on. But I think intentionality, the ins and outs of what I'm seeing here, I feel really good about. And so if you're not someone who has sat down to even do your resolutions yet, and you're not a resolutions person, I invite you to do just this. What do you want to usher in, and what do you want to bouncer out? Side note, I was a bouncer in college, and if you've seen me or know me, like, I'm 5'7", 185. I'm not bouncing anyone out. And at that time, I was like more 5'7", like 155. Anywho, I get sidetracked. All right, y'all. I hope this was helpful for you. Like I said, if you're not someone who is a resolution person, but you're someone who really just wants to look at intentionality, I would encourage you to practice your own version of the ins and outs of 2023. I would urge you to take a look at this quote, to break it down a little bit more with what it might mean for you, because it was something that I felt was incredibly influential for me as I'm looking forward. So I love y'all. Cheers to 2023. I hope you all stay safe, hydrate, mind your damn business, eat your food, get some sleep, go for a walk, move your body. You know the drill. Let's go.